After the death of Hajime Kashimo, Higuruma and Yuji arrive on the battlefield to take on Sukuna in a tag team battle that will decide the fate of the world. And even though Higuruma is one of my top 3 favorite characters and I absolutely love him, I really just don't think they're going to make it out of this fight alive, and Sukuna will come out of this fight victorious yet again, like he has done back to back already against 2 of the strongest sorcerers from their eras, Gojo and Kashimo. This guy is a different beast. He won both of those fights back to back without rest. But how is this battle going to go, and can Sukuna actually beat the Allegations? That is what we're going to be finding out today in this JJK 239 prediction video. So hey, do your boy a solid and leave a like, it helps out a ton, thank you. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of JJK content just like this. JJK spoiler videos, crazy theories, analysis, power scaling, because only 10% of people who actually watch my videos are subscribed. So if you want to see some consistent and quality JJK content, trust me, you will not regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to the special group members of the channel. Thank you guys very much. Let us get into this video. And that's actually very important to first talk about Higuruma, since it seems like he's going to be a very key piece to this fight as he arrives with Yuji and Yuji activates his technique. Now, whatever Yuji's technique actually is, I already have 4 different theories on that and I've made a whole video for it, so I won't be talking about it here. But it seems like Higuruma is ready to fight. He's readying up his tie, he's got his gravel already out, and I really do believe that one of the first pages of the next chapter will actually see him say domain expansion, deadly sentencing. Now, just a reminder for those who are sleeping on Higuruma. Hiromi Higuruma, who's 36 years old, is someone who readily overcame such challenges as the entrance exam for the law department at T University and the old national bar exam that preceded the law school system. His peers refer to him as a genius, but to him it was easy, a simple matter of applying the necessary effort to acquire the required knowledge. What stands about him the most, though, is his talent as a sorcerer. Through analyzing the curse technique that came by default with his domain, just like Akari, he actually learned the basics of barrier techniques. Then, by working backward from the barrier techniques, he acquired an instinctive grasp of reinforcement techniques derived from curse energy control. After 12 days of awakening his curse technique, Higuruma reached a level comparable to a grade 1 sorcerer. Before entering the colony, he defeated many cursed spirits and defeated at least 20 players who attacked him. Now, this is just phenomenal stuff. I'm not even gonna lie, I don't think we have ever seen a talent this high or someone who's this much of a genius. I mean, just consider the fact that in 12 days he had actually became the strongest grade 1 sorcerer, where before those 12 days he didn't even know what Jujutsu was or cursed energy is. And the craziest thing of it all, it's all self-taught. He had no teachers, he had no one to guide him, no one to explain anything. He literally figured it out through sheer instinct and his talent for it, because he is an absolute genius when it comes to sorcery. The only person who's comparable to this is actually Gojo, who was just born extremely gifted and was really just a prodigy right from the beginning, as we saw even as a child. He was a complete god. And even with Yuta, though Yuta may be very gifted and blessed, as he says in his own words, in terms of genius and talent, he doesn't even compare to Higuruma, and that's pretty crazy considering the fact that Yuta is one of the most talented sorcerers we've seen in the series. As it took Yuta a long time, I think it was a couple weeks to a couple months, to actually get the grasp of curse energy and to use it properly, and a ton of training from a ton of strong characters and teachers from Jujutsu High itself, where Higuruma, again, all self-taught. Now, the reason I'm actually hyping up Higuruma so much, give him a whole month to train for the fight of his life. He is going to be an absolute monster. It really wouldn't surprise me if he was actually a special grade level right now, though that's probably very unlikely considering it's only been a month, right? It'd probably take a lot longer than that. I'd give this guy a solid year and he easily would reach a actual special grade level, at least a year or 2. But I imagine he's actually probably approaching it at least after this month of training, though it probably doesn't matter when you're fighting against Sukuna, who can actually just one-shot special grades like it's nothing right now in his Heian form and his space-time cutting attacks. Now, how is Higuruma actually going to go up against Sukuna? How is he going to fare against him with his domain expansion? It all really does depend on, one, can Sukuna actually cast the domain expansion? Because it's still unclear if he can cast it, right? Since he's actually incarnated his body, maybe his brain is healed along with the rest of his body, but it's really weird because the specific part of his brain that was damaged, it's a very unique part that cannot be healed normally reverse curse technique. And it's kind of implying that the incarnation was similar to reverse curse technique, though maybe not. The reason I'm saying this is because if Higuruma casts the domain expansion, it doesn't matter how strong Sukuna is, how fast and deadly his attacks are, nothing's going to reach Higuruma and he'll be forced to actually play out the trial. But if he is capable of actually using his domain expansion, I see no reason why he wouldn't just activate as soon as Higuruma does. Because there's absolutely no way that Higuruma actually has a faster domain activation time than Sukuna. Considering Sukuna's speed, by the time Higuruma even attempts to cast the domain expansion, Sukuna should be able to see it and probably activate his own before that. So that's why I'm saying it really does depend on if Sukuna has still not healed his domain expansion part of his brain, the black box. Though it's possible that, just like Sukuna was saying in the current chapter, sometimes he just entertains things. If someone seems fun, he'll play with them until he gets bored and kills them. It is possible that he does have his domain expansion, but he'll play along with the trial anyway, just for the fun of it, right? Because he's just him. He's that guy, the god of Jujutsu. This guy just washed the 2 strongest sorcerers of their eras, the 2 goats of their eras, back to back without rest. And a very important factor to note into this fight is that Sukuna is well aware of Higuruma's techniques all the way down to the absolute details and even the weaknesses of it. And this is because, in case you guys have forgotten, Sukuna was actually actually in Yuji's body at the time when Yuji had fought Higuruma. And of course, Yuji actually very cleverly figured out the weakness of the domain, which is actually you can cast a retrial, though it is pretty risky because whatever verdict you got in the first trial, you could actually potentially make it worse. So let's say Sukuna just got guilty in the first trial and they just charged him for something light, which would be very funny considering it's Sukuna and all the heinous crimes he has committed. But it's possible that if Sukuna loses the second one, he may get the death penalty, which is even worse since the Sword of Light should be able to kill Sukuna. There's no reason it shouldn't be able to, but of course there's the big factor that it needs to actually touch Sukuna, and Sukuna is so much stronger than Higuruma that by the time Higuruma, his brain even processes Sukuna has moved, he's already been caught by Sukuna. Sukuna's that much faster, unless, like I said before, in the past month Higuruma has gotten so much stronger that somehow he can actually react to Sukuna's speed, something that even Ryuichi Gori can't do, which is always possible. Like, I know it sounds crazy and it's probably not going to happen, but if it does happen, it makes complete sense. It's just insane that it would make sense, you know, because Higuruma is that much of a genius. Now, it's possible that Sukuna would recognize Higuruma is the biggest threat first, especially if he doesn't have his domain, so he might try to kill him right off the bat, but of course, Yuji might come in and try to counter with his own Cleaviness Mantle or Death Painting ability or Soul ability, you know, whatever Yuji has. He might try to block the first Sukuna attack and just barely give Higuruma enough time to cast that domain expansion. Yuji might even use himself as a meat shield and just tank a hit, because the hit should be nullified and should be a lot weak against Yuji since Yuji is shrouded in his cursed energy, and as we learned in the Gojo fight, when you take attacks that are infused with a similar cursed energy to the one that you have, so if Yuji takes attacks from Sukuna's Jujutsu, which does have Sukuna's cursed energy, Yuji, who is shrouded in Sukuna's cursed energy, should have a resistance to this. This should even apply to Sukuna's reinforcement or refinement in physical blows. Though of course, it is really debated about in the fanbase right now if Yuji can actually tank an attack that can completely negate durability, which is Sukuna's space-time existence reality cutting attack, and even though it can cut time itself, since if you can cut existence, that means you can cut time, it doesn't mean it has infinite speed. We still see that it does travel at some speed. It's not like it's beyond time. So it can cut time, but it's not beyond it. I hope that makes sense. But Sukuna himself says that it completely negates all durability and defenses, so would this just completely bypass the whole Yuji having resistance against Sukuna's attack since he has his cursed energy, or could it really be because the attack itself is made up of the cursed energy that Yuji has, which is Sukuna's? Even if it negates durability, that might be weakened. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because someone needs to be able to tank something from Sukuna, because if no one can, everyone just gets a one shot. He's so powerful. And this is important because once the domain ends and Higuruma does have the Sword of Light, Yuji will be very important in basically being a meat shield or a bodyguard of sorts, or the person who's going to handle the physical combat and try and give Higuruma an opening to just sneak in and hit him with the Sword of Light and kill Sukuna that way. And now if Sukuna would actually die to this, this is also debatable itself. The exact explanation given by the Viz is that without expectation, anyone cut by the Executioner's sword will die. Now what does it mean will die? Is it just going to turn off their brain and their heart and everything at once, like actually just take their soul out and kill them? Or is it just going to stop their heart and means die like that? Considering the extreme wording here, I imagine even Sukuna shouldn't be able to tank the Executioner's sword. If it was just an ability that would just stop the heart, we've seen Sukuna can actually live with his heart ripped out. That's not an issue for it. But the fact that the Jujutsu technique will just kill you, it's just instant death, I don't see why Sukuna should be able to tank this. I mean, maybe he can sacrifice a finger for it, or Uraume will take the shot for him, or maybe he would have Megami die for it. That would be so funny. I can't lie, I really just don't want that. I don't want Megami to die by Higuruma's hands in such a gruesome way. That would be pretty depressing, especially considering the last video I just made hyping up Megami as the Dark Honored one, right? The next strongest when the series ends. So hopefully he doesn't die, but it would be a very funny way for him to go out if Sukuna uses his soul as a meat shield like he did for the Unlimited Void. But you see, it's the weakness that I think is going to be the biggest issue for Higuruma, where Sukuna having access to Yuji's memories and having seen it himself, he will demand a retrial if things are getting ugly, and let's say Yuji and Higuruma are actually somehow beating the crap out of Sukuna, where Sukuna's lost his curse technique and his curse energy control is really shaky, since when sorcerers lose the ability to wield curse techniques, usually their foundational cursed energy control also weakens, and Higuruma guesses maybe it's because it goes against long ingrained instincts, and of course, maybe this would have an effect on Sukuna. It's really hard to tell because Sukuna is such a prodigy that his instincts are off the charts. Everything he does is probably instinctual, so it's really hard to tell if this ability actually works better on weaker opponents or stronger opponents, or if Sukuna is so strong that even if it works better against stronger opponents, it wouldn't even matter to him because he's such a Jujutsu god that his cursed energy control won't be affected at all. Regardless, I still think this would be a pretty good way to put Sukuna on the back foot, where Yuji can somehow try and compete with him hand to hand, even though he'd probably lose, but Yuji would have whatever curse technique he has on his arms, and Sukuna would have no curse technique, so he'd be at a massive disadvantage in that situation. And of course, it would be made worse if Higuruma has the Executioner's sword, and Sukuna would have no way to actually keep him at a distance, since his Cleaviness Mantle and 10 Shadows are completely disabled, so all Sukuna has is hand to hand. Yes, Sukuna can blitz Higuruma and just one-shot him, but but just coming close to the executioner's sword, even if you're faster, it is a very big risk, because even if it accidentally grazes you or touches you, you just die. So that's actually why I think Sukuna will be losing in the beginning after the first trial, but of course Sukuna will demand a retrial, and Sukuna will pull out his inner Saul Goodman, and he will just cook up a very good case somehow. I don't know, he's a very smart guy, maybe he can just waffle his way out of it, or maybe actually during the second retrial, or in some way he would actually heal his brain, if that's even possible. You know, maybe enough time has passed and it naturally would heal, or maybe again because he's in his hand body it just heals quicker, or it just healed the moment he incarnated. It's all just guesswork really, and he can actually just cast his domain expansion, so even if he's lost his curse techniques to Higuruma's domain expansion, he's not going to lose his domain. I don't think it ever said anything about confiscation taking away your domain expansion, but maybe you can't use a domain expansion anyway, because to use a domain expansion you need to actually imbue your curse technique into the domain to create it. So it's possible if you've lost your curse technique, then you just lose the ability to cast domain expansion, which would be pretty powerful, I really can't lie. But regardless, whether it's through a second retrial or domain expansion or whatever hack Sukuna has, right, maybe he has something you've never seen and he uses shrine, he just opens his shrine, and maybe it's actually through opening the shrine that bypasses the curse technique removal of Higuruma's. So maybe when Higuruma actually takes away curse techniques, he's just going to take away the Cleaviness Mantle and maybe even the 10 Shadows, but Sukuna's going to be like, oh, that's very interesting, shrine open, and he's going to access another curse technique that wasn't taken away, and thus ending everyone then and there. I just really don't see them winning this here. It'd be very weird if this specific plan worked. It would be so perfect, it would just be too perfect, and knowing GEGE, I don't think Higuruma and Yuji are just going to come in, kill Sukuna, win easily like that, and the series ends then and there. But keep in mind, I don't think Yuji's going to lose permanently. I think he's probably going to lose this fight, but regardless of what happens, right, if he loses a limb or if he's knocked out, whatever, I think he's going to get back up, and him and Sukuna are going to have a round 2, or maybe even a round 3 if he loses again in round 2. For a recent example to give, it's very akin to Luffy versus Kaido. Luffy lost to Kaido a ton of times. I think it was like 3 or 4 times he actually got either knocked out or just fully lost the battle too. But of course, Luffy got back up and he entered the fight time and time again until he eventually had the final battle with Kaido and went Gear 5. I think it's going to be something very similar for Yuji, where whatever final power-up, if he even gets a final power-up or anything like that, he may get it in the final fight. That would be very cool to see. But even if he doesn't, I just don't think it's going to be as simple as this one fight we're getting in the very first fight Yuji wins. I could be wrong, you know, GEGE is very unpredictable. Sometimes when you think something's very obvious, like, oh, no way Yuji wins the first time, Yuji just wins the first time and Sukuna loses. You never really know with GEGE. And hey, if Sukuna really does win the first time, that's great, because I've recently, in case you aren't aware, invested all my stocks into Yuji too. If he wins that easily, perfect, but again, I just don't think it's going to come that easily. As much as I love Higuruma, he's in my top 3 favorite characters, I do think he's actually going to bite the dust, right, and get Kira Yoshikage'd by Sukuna, and it's just over for him. I mean, it's just like GEGE said in the past, where the moment a character served their purpose, or the moment they've fulfilled their role, he just gets rid of them. He sees no reason for them to live, he'll just kill them off like it's nothing, as we've seen with a countless number of characters. And it might be the same with Higuruma. Higuruma may have just served his purpose the first time with Yuji and the 100 points. Everything we're getting from now is just extra until he eventually decides to kill him. I truly hope I'm wrong. I would love to see Higuruma live, and he could actually just go on trial for the crimes that he committed by killing the 2 judges as well. But maybe it really might be better for him to just die, as sad as it sounds, because it would be his way of repenting for killing those 2 people and for killing everyone else he's killed. Maybe he'd view it in that way, and it'd be a way for him to actually cleanse his sins or something like that. I don't know. Higuruma is a very complex character and a very cool one. It's why I love him. What actually made his fight with Yuji the best fight in the entire series, bar none, at least in my personal opinion. It is top 1. Though you may disagree, you know, maybe another fight's your favorite. But regardless, I just hope Higuruma, if he does go out, he goes out like an absolute badass, and hopefully he gets like a beautiful ending like Kashimo did. It was such a fantastically written goodbye to Kashimo, and the lines between him and Sukuna were so beautiful. It was so well written. As a Kashimo fan, it really sucked to see him just get no-diffed. I can't lie, that really hurt. But the actual send-off that he got in the afterlife was nothing short of phenomenal writing. So if Higuruma gets a death that's on a similar level of writing compared to Kashimo and those guys, you know, maybe he gives Yuji a goodbye or says it's all up to you, Yuji, or something like that, that would be more than I could ask for. Especially if Higuruma can damage Sukuna. If he does, I'm taking that to the grave of me as a Higuruma stan. But hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, it helps out a ton. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content just like this. 90% of people who actually watch my videos aren't subscribed, so if you want to see a ton of crazy theories, power scaling videos, analysis, JJK spoiler videos on chapters, be sure to subscribe. Trust me, if you love JJK, you will not regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to all the channel members as well. It is much appreciated. And so all from me, have a nice day and take care, guys.